But there's other perspectives, and Dawn, you will be presenting research that you have done, again, from a user perspective on some other corners where commercial systems will probably not go anytime soon. You will introduce yourself, what you've been working on these last years, and I think it is great to see once again that when there is unmet needs felt by people living with diabetes, it's the community of people living with diabetes stepping in, bringing these forward, figuring out solutions or research, and we will hear more about this from Dawn herself. Dawn from Northern Ireland, our DDoc voice, thank you for being here.
Hello, so my name is Dawn Adams. I live in Northern Ireland and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 30 years ago. I work as a midwife, that's my primary career, and I also work as a PhD researcher at Ulster University, now in their Belfast campus. I'm very interested in the whole concept of citizen science. As someone who uses Android APS, and has done so for 3 years, I found more and more that while open has come to a close, for those of us using the systems, the advice, the information that we have has suddenly thrown a whole new raft of questions at us. There are things that we want to know, things we want to find out. And citizen science is the involvement of the public in scientific research, whether community-driven research or global investigations. The Citizen Science Association unites expertise from educators, scientists, data managers, and others to power citizen science. So why does this matter? When many of us who've lived with diabetes for more than 25 years or more were diagnosed, the expectation was that we wouldn't live long, healthy lives. I keep having flashbacks to the day that I was admitted to the hospital with high blood glucose levels in a state of DKA. And what I remember most was 2 days later a conversation with my consultant who said, "You probably won't get pregnant. And if you do, you probably won't live long enough to see the menopause. You'll probably be dead by the time you're 40 or 45. That was the reality. I did make it past all of those targets. I did come through that, in part because of the work of the St. Vincent Declaration and the Diabetes Control and Complications trials. Their results were aspirational. They set a very high bar, but as my mother would have said, you saw targets and you always did your best to beat them. If somebody told you you couldn't, you went out of your way to prove them wrong. One of the things that we were doing back then was working with insulin vials, syringes, glucometers that took 2 minutes to give a reading, and we'd no peer support. We were working completely independently. Changes then started to come about as we accessed education programs, glucometers, insulin pumps, intermittent continuous glucose monitors, and continuous glucose monitors, peer support, and DIY APS. As I've said, I've come through the pregnancy stage. I've now hit that menopause stage in life, and that has thrown up so many questions. Katrina referenced that earlier today in her talk at the Open Project. It was referenced by other speakers earlier on today as well. What we started to realize, once we had continuous glucose data, once we were able to look at insulin profiles, once we were able to look at insulin sensitivity, we noticed that not only did a deficit of insulin being manufactured by our bodies have an impact on how we felt, how we thought, how we moved, how we perceived things, a deficit of estrogen, a deficit of progesterone, a deficit of testosterone also had a significant impact. And no matter how hard we tried, it didn't matter what we ate, it didn't matter how much we exercised, it didn't matter how much time we invested into our diabetes care, but we started to see that we were failing significantly. One of the graphs that was shown at the Open this morning was to do with women and men's profiles run parallel to each other throughout different points in the day. And it's noticeable that women's profiles ran ever so slightly higher. They never seem to run below what a male profile runs at, but certainly they run slightly higher. And that was a conversation that was opened up amongst women who were using DIY APS systems of whatever sort. So with the data, we started to get some power. We started to see how this power was changing, how biology was impacting it, how physiology was affected by it, and how the interactions with diabetes technology continually changed. They were never in a state of constant, it was always in a state of flux. On the screen, you'll see an example of a logbook from one of the Night Scout sites. A number of us got together and we started asking questions in a much more public forum. We were able to hold an online Facebook group meeting for women from right across Europe about menopause and perimenopause, women with type 1 diabetes. So the conversations that had been rumbling quietly in the background about hormones, fertility, insulin resistance, and the sense of personal failure suddenly became much more mainstream. When menopause took centre stage, we started to have questions and we were happy to voice those questions. A number of those examples are up on the screen in front of you there. We pulled together and decided to share our data. We downloaded data from Night Scout. We sent the data to a colleague who works in research, and we were able to validate questions and concerns that we had within the type 1 community as a population moving through perimenopause into menopause. We were able to take a data set from one individual who pre-HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and post-hormone replacement therapy initiation. We were able to take information from a similarly matched individual who had not decided to use HRT at that point in time. And we were able to show a change in the insulin sensitivity, in the amount of insulin required by the person who had gone from no hormone replacement therapy into hormone replacement therapy. And we had as our comparison the person who hadn't taken any hormone replacement therapy, apart from insulin. Obviously, it is a hormone. The paper was published and was presented at the 9th International Electronic Conference on Sensors and Applications in November last year. It was quite an achievement to have this topic being presented at an international global physics conference, and it received a very warm welcome with a lot of feedback from the symposium directors, from those participating in online discussions as well. As a result of that work, collaborative work from within the community, a citizen science project, we were able to find out that people with diabetes are curious, they're observant, they're very interested, they're very invested, and they're here for the long game. And I think that was echoed very strongly today in the open sessions as well. And as Tade has also said earlier on, you have to include people living with diabetes in the management of diabetes. If you don't, you're not going to fill in those blanks, you're not going to fill in those gaps. The research that you undertake isn't necessarily going to translate well into real-life situations. And as a researcher, if you're not researching to improve the quality of lives of people around you, what are you researching for? So why does this matter? And what do we, as people living with diabetes, want you to know? Many of us have already exceeded the expectations of clinicians who guided us in the early days following our diagnosis. We want those who come behind us to have ownership of the knowledge we are helping to create so that they can live even better lives than the lives that we've lived. If we ask you, our consultants and healthcare professionals, questions, it's because we want to know the answers. We want to know what you can do to guide and support us as we try and traverse the life with a complicated condition. And if you can't answer the questions, we'll find a way to answer those questions ourselves. There is a lot of power within the diabetes community, and I think in this instance we have harnessed the power, we've given you some research, we've opened a door, and we're more than happy to support you as you pursue this topic for future reference. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dawn. I think that was, and I hope you all agree, that was really powerful. And I hope that to all the healthcare professionals in the room, that doesn't sound like a threat that we will find the answers ourselves. It is meant as we want to collaborate, we want to work together with you, with research, with industry, but we always ask to be included, and we have become more, you call it more powerful, but also more self-aware of what we can do. And if that Diabetes Online community and the people living with diabetes are enabled together with technology that is free of charge, like the DIYAPS community, and that data comes together, we can find solutions and work on topics that maybe for some official researchers or industry are not so important yet or do not take center stage yet. But that has been said about many things in the past that now are center stage. So let's see where we go with this.